Muy bien. Buenas tardes. Continuando con nuestra primera semana internacional de investigación, damos paso a nuestra última conferencia de esta semana y del día de hoy con John Cooper. Me voy a permitir dar lectura a un extracto de su largo currículum. Y John Cooper es director del Sundance Festival del 2009, supervisa la dirección creativa del festival, toma la decisión final sobre todas las películas y eventos, creó el programa de cortometraje y pasó rápidamente a la programación de documentales y largometrajes. En los últimos años tomó la iniciativa en el desarrollo de la presencia en línea del instituto, que ha obtenido 2 premios Webby. Sin más preámbulo, démosle la bienvenida a John Cooper. John,
Yes.
welcome. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
We are ready to hear you.
Okay. Go for it.
Go for it.
Hello, welcome everyone. And thank you very much for inviting me. I find this a very interesting concept to think about, not just films in the festival and our history, but actually how we get there. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. First about me, I'm actually director emeritus of the festival. It was my last festival, so I'm almost retired, but I've worked for the festival for 30 years. I started as a volunteer and just, an under person. And then I I created the shorts program very early on. I moved into features. I was director of programming for the festival for 9 years. And then for the last 11 years, I've been director of the Sundance Film Festival. So I've seen a lot of changes and a lot of growth, and really helped, I was on the team that really helped construct what we've become. It's a big festival. It's one of the top tier festivals in the world. There's festivals like Cannes and Berlin and Toronto and Sundance. We get probably about 80,000 people to a small ski town in Utah. And it's a big event. There's many, many, many parts of this big event. But of course, the core is always the films. I think it's important to talk about what's different about our festival is that we are a festival of, we call it, of discovery. People come to Sundance to discover new talent, to find new filmmakers, I'm sorry, my phone's beeping. They come to buy films and sell films. Even though we're not an official marketplace, we are still very important to the film industry as a place for new films. And when I'm talking about films, we're talking about films that we call independent films. And those are films that are not made in the studio system. So it's a lot of filmmakers' hopes and dreams, people that, scrape together the money to make films. And it's not just American either. We have a whole international program as well. So what we do is we have to find 120 new films every year. And that's kind of the limit that we have. And so it's a big undertaking. But I kind of want to talk a little bit how research has played in what we do. Because we have to find all these new artists, and every film has to be a world premiere, these films aren't necessarily, and in the early years, weren't easy to find. Who's making them? What town out there in America or in the world are people making these films? And it became, we wanted to find the best possible films because that's what our legacy and our reputation was built on. So when you think about it that way, it's like every year it's very fast too, because you have to find all these films And now our submission numbers have gone up to in the thousands. I think we get about close to 5,000 feature films and close to 10,000 short films every year. So it's a big undertaking. So as you could probably figure out, we started way a long time ago in the late 80s. We would have to research in very traditional, conventional ways. Like we track the trade papers, Variety, Hollywood Reporter, all through the year. And we would see, they would announce this film is going into production, this film's going into production, this actor is doing this film. And we would track that, but we soon realized that there was no way we could keep up. And so we had to kind of think of a whole different way of how to stay competitive and vital in this market and not allow any films to get by us without showing the best ones. So it was competitive and a little fierce in the early years. But what we really had to do was reverse engineer the whole process. We sort of took a beat and stopped and thought and said, what we can't find all these films. We can't search them out. It's too much work and without enough time. We had to create a system where everybody who made a new film heard about us. So we had to, like I said, we had to reverse engineer it. We had to make them find us so we could get to the work of watching them all and selecting them all. And I'll get to selection if you want to hear that. But what we had to do is create value in the festival and create a legacy in the festival that was so strong that every new filmmaker, because we're talking about new young filmmakers. So that's not, the old guys. It's not Alfonso Cuarón, and it's not, Iñárritu. These are young people that we need to find them and they need to find us. So we worked very hard to tell the story of who we are and what we could do for the films and prove it. There's one way talking about yourself, but you have to prove it. And so we set out in the early years. I would go to colleges and any place where there's a lot of young students. Now it seems so many young people have heard about Sundance. It's not just young people, but filmmakers have heard of Sundance. We don't have to work so hard. But in the early years, we had to get the word out. And I said, reverse engineer it. So they created so much value that everybody submitted their films to us directly. So we didn't have to worry about that. So our research was almost like created to be self-fulfilling. So we had to do that. And then this legacy propels the submission. So then we get all the films in. I call this artists are a moving target, because the research for artists is, it changes every year. It's not like you're researching dinosaurs or just data. There is no data. So you have to create the data. The data has to come to you as this institution to be able to process it. And it goes so fast and furious because discovery is a weird concept, because you're finding the new each time. And that changes every year. So it's always these waves of new people. And just jumping back, if we start to fail, the Sundance Film Festival is also part of the Sundance Institute, which is a big organization that trains filmmakers, and it's created by Robert Redford, our founder. And it's a big deal, but it has to be paid for. And that is, so the festival pays for a lot of that. So there was all that pressure to keep the festival so vital and so competitive that it never lost its edge. People still wanted to come. Filmmakers wanted to give us their films. And it's all about the value of what we give them. So we worked really hard creating all sorts of things for them. So when they come, we make it very easy for them to find agents and for agents to find them, to sell their films, creating a press and industry section where the films can be bought and sold. Like I said, we're not an official market, but in truth, we became that by just being this kind of hot arts festival. So it all was a self-fulfilling prophecy sort of how we did that. So, and also I think that we also have to stay on the forefront of technology. Funny enough, especially this year, because technology is going to be driving everything. As in this age of COVID, we're all going to be digital. So it's going to be a much different festival this year. I'm not part of the selection this year. I was kind of relieved by that, actually, because it's going to be a weird one, but they're doing that right now. I watched a lot of the films and helped them, but I'm not I don't have to be the sole keeper of all that information right now. And also we had to really follow the industry and what they were looking for and what they wanted. And what we've always done all along is follow the filmmakers, what they need, because that's how you stay vital to them. Are they needing more training? Are they needing more industry connection? And we keep building programs around that, actually. Like, so when somebody comes to the festival, it's not just showing their film, they're actually building their career. They actually you can build your career no matter where you are, and with other festivals, of course. But what Sundance really does is this big jump start to a career. So you really have that big jump in being known to all the important people who are going to make you a career and give you a career. And that is really what it's been going on for the last many years. And we have to keep on it all the time. You have to stay very aggressive and rigorous in your selection process. Now, on the other side of that, this isn't so much research per se, but how are the films selected? Like I said, there's only 120 films out of 5,000. Yes, at the festival, there are different categories. There's actually the main competitions are the main part of the festival. And we do both dramatic films, what we call dramatic or feature films, and documentaries. So, and Robert Redford, right from the beginning, always sort of told us he wanted to keep documentaries as important as feature films in the festival. So everything is equal on both sides of that, which just makes for a lot of content that we have to go through. It is a big, huge job getting through the selection process. The selection process starts, I say now it starts in July and goes all the way through selection, which I think is like tomorrow, actually, where they are right now, because then you have to get everything ready for the festival itself, which I didn't say this, but the festival is in January. It's the last weeks in January. So now there's a race to the finish of getting everything set up. It's so weird to talk about it because nothing's the same this year because they're not setting up venues and theaters and places for people to stay and all that stuff. But still, they'll get back to that. But that's what we've been living with for the last 30 years, this big timeline, a calendar that you have to meet all these deadlines all the time to make this big event. I sometimes joke it's like throwing a big wedding, like the biggest wedding there is, because you have all these details, all these people, all these different events. And that's what it always felt like to me, a lot of that. So then selection, basically, we had to create a system where no film got forgotten and everything got the same treatment. So one thing we agreed on right from the beginning was that each film would be watched all the way through by somebody. We didn't want to be a festival where they watched 10 minutes of a film and then move on. We knew that people's sweat and blood went into these films, and we thought it was important to give them full credit, and that's something we dedicated ourselves to. Now, the process we invented is we have it's what I call a cream will rise situation. It's like everything gets watched, everything gets done, and people move up through the ranks like a beauty pageant, or something like that, or other kinds of sports events where you have to just keep moving up depending on the quality of your work. I will say that when we're looking for one thing we're always looking for is originality and creativity, because that's what's driven the independent film market to be different from even Hollywood films. Hollywood films are big and sometimes really beautiful and really moving, but these are the films made by people without as much money. So it takes a lot of creativity, a lot of originality. And I think over the years, where Hollywood has maybe filled up more with the bigger movies, the bigger broad comedies, or superhero movies, independent films are still the more personal, emotional films. So you're looking at all that stuff when you look at them. So back to what the process is, the films come in and they go out to screeners, and so he watches them all the way through, takes notes on them. They give them a rating, and then they come up to the basic programming team. Right now, there are 9 people who select the films for the festival. There's a documentary team and a feature team, but one thing different at Sundance than other festivals is you don't program for a section. All these 9 people have a say in what gets in the festival, which again, as great as that sounds, it makes for a lot more work, because this person isn't giving you 25 films to get in and this person's giving you another 25. You have to have many ways of discussing these films and helping them move up to the final stages. That is what's been going on for the last couple of months already. Films get, if they're not liked well enough by the team, they go away, and they're always cutting them down until in the end, probably for 120 films, there's sort of like 200 finalists, if you want to call them that. And then that's where the job gets really difficult and a little bit loud sometimes, because that's where the arguing starts. They go in different days. You go into this room, and it's a big table, and films are thrown out, and everybody's yes, no, maybe on the film. So they go yes, no, or maybe, and then it gets argued about. And then as that goes on, there's cards on a wall, and films just have to, you know what your deadline is, and you know how many films you can show, and that's a limit. So you just start culling them down, and pretty soon, you know, the last couple of days are a little tense. Tears happen, arguments happen, but everybody who's in this group has been doing this for a while, and they're friends with each other. So you really have a mutual respect for each other's opinions. And me as a director, it was more about who those people were and putting together a team of people that are very diverse, not just in classic ways of being diverse, although that is part of it, but also how they look at film. Like there's the one person that really enjoys experimental film more. There's the ones that, you know, are more keen to like a lot of technology, and there's acting and the story and what kind of stories they are. So each one has sometimes there's more academic approach to a more instinctual approach. We talk about that a lot. I was always a little more of an instinctual selector, because I just watch a film and kind of feel it and know if it can work or not. And I think I've developed that skill even more over the years. And so there's that side, but then the other people have a little more logic and a little more of a logical approach to it, which I call academic, but they both are needed in the room. So I'm trying to balance the room, because the goal is a simple goal. It's to do the best program possible, to get the best films possible. And so that's a lot. We've already done all that work for years of getting their films to us. Now we have to sort through them and put together the best festival possible. And it's like I said, it's a big job, but it's an interesting one. I think what has grown over the years is the importance with the buying and selling of films and industry, and actually coming to the festival itself is its own kind of madness. And God, I'm just whipping through all my stuff so fast. I thought I was going to talk for so long. Maybe we can get to question and answers quicker. But anyway, over the years, the legacy has to build. You have to find the Quentin Tarantinos. Y Tu Mama Tambien premiered at the festival. Those young directors, you're constantly on a feeding of these new faces and this new talent, because that's what brings people back to the festival. That's what excites you there. And that legacy and that story keeps promoting the ongoing importance of the festival. And you have to keep your eyes on that all the time. For myself, I realized as I went from a programmer is a very interesting person because they're more like argumentative. They have their opinions and they're coming in the room to argue for the films they love. From the outside, I'm judging the passion in the room. It's, how are they talking about this film? Are they saying things that are explaining it to me in ways that I know that an audience will love this film? Because for me, a game that I played in my head was, if somebody came to the Sundance Film Festival and just watched this one film, would they still understand who we are and what we do? And so I always come back to that as a guiding factor. It's like, does this film stand on its own? Even if you don't understand it. Some of my favorite moments are when I will sit in the back of a theater sometime and just listen to the comments of people coming out. And for me, even if they said, I didn't understand that film at all, but I kind of liked it, that is a success for me, because it still means that it touches people on some kind of emotional level. And the hardest part about my job was not being a critic, because you have to stay open to so many different points of view about cinema. It's not my opinion, because most people, if you ask them, how many films do you love a year? It's like 5, 10 films. So for us, we have to find 120 films that we supposedly love. So that's hard. So you're more always trying to not be narrow, to be keeping your perception of cinema open and more inclusive and more interesting. Just the legacy of the Sundance Institute in general is that we have a outstanding record for showing films by women, showing films by gay, lesbian, LGBT community, showing films by diverse race, Black, Latinx, Chinese, Japanese, Asian. And I think in some ways we always had to fight the urge to search that out, to do it for the effect of doing that. But it happened quite naturally that when films come from diverse backgrounds, they're innately more interesting because they're not like all the films that have been made before them. So it was sort of a natural sort of phenomenon that happened, that many of the films that we selected and made famous, and the directors that we've made famous over the years, come from a very diverse background, because innately they're making a different kind of original film because of their point of view on the world, which is something that has been one of the best parts of my job as well, is that you get to see all these different points of view from all over the world. The festival itself has many categories. There, like I said, there's there's a competition for feature and documentary, and then there's the international competition, that's from America, and then the international competition from documentaries and feature films. So you have those 4 bases covered. And then there's midnight films. There's what we call the premiere section, which are sort of bigger films that are almost too big to compete in a way. They're made by directors that have maybe made like 3 or 4 or 5 films already, but they're still working in the independent realm. So the festival has a lot of categories in itself that help audiences discover them. And in the last couple of years, we've added a whole section called New Frontier. Couple of years, it's already been over 10. But it was my project in the beginning where we realized that storytelling was changing with bringing on all sorts of technology, and especially with virtual reality and augmented reality, and then Oculus headsets. Oculus actually got their start at the festival. They proved what they were doing by us showing introducing their headsets at the festival, and then the company went on to sell for a lot of money. It's interesting too that Sundance is a not-for-profit. So even though we do all this work, it is really a not-for-profit, and in our soul and in our hearts. And what was created by Robert Redford, our founder, was that this is something to serve culture. We firmly believe that to change the world and make it a better place, the only thing that really does that is storytelling, to learn about other people. And that can be done one-on-one, of course, but the world is so big that it's not happening fast enough. And I think with film, you see insights into people and what makes them think, and you can learn a new kind of appreciation for different kinds of people in it. So we take very seriously that storytelling can change the world. And it's a very, very powerful medium. Of all the artistic mediums right now, it is the one that most people have access to. It is the one that has grown the most in the last 20 years. And I think that its power to bring us other places and to teach us other things about each other, I think is a very important thing. And we do think about that when we're programming the festival. And that, like I said, came from Robert Redford. He wanted to create a place. It started off a place for independent filmmakers to meet each other, but also learn better craft, because they have to compete. The competition, as you can imagine, to get into this festival is tremendous. It's such an opportunity. We almost built that value into it almost so great that it's a lot of pressure on the programming team too, because they know what the gift that they're giving to every film that makes it in the festival. And it's a big deal, and they take it seriously. And then there's all that energy around it, the press, the critics, buying and selling of films. And I think we hit our biggest numbers last year because everybody's looking for content. And I think this year in particular, the festival this year is going almost purely digital. There are different passes, but in some ways that's, sad for us that have created this big event that was really important. But on the other hand, it's going to democratize who can see this festival as well, because it is expensive to come to a festival. It's expensive to come to America and come to this ski town and stay there and watch the films and the ticket prices and all that. And now it's going to be, you don't have to leave your home necessarily to experience the festival. So I think it's going to be a very interesting audience, and they're still trying to think of all the ways to create the magic that happens there. It was a very magical moment. It's like just all that talent there, meeting the audiences. There's an energy in this small town that happens where that can't happen this year. So how do you create that in the digital realm? And they're working hard at finding ways for you to be able to talk directly to a filmmaker if you want to, for the filmmakers to still have their Q&As with a lot of the people who've just watched the film. And basically, there's going to be lots of experimentation. I think it's going to work and be different. And then hopefully in the future, we'll take these learnings and mix them into the live experience. So the festivals of the future could be a hybrid of both digital and live. And so you'd be able to kind of do what is right for you as a audience member to experience the festival. We were just talking, I'm just branching off in where we sort of are now in the world order of this, and production has been crazy. It's kind of interesting that the submission numbers are not that much lower now than they were last year, which only means that a lot of films were already shot, probably what we call, they were in the can, but they weren't edited yet. So during the COVID quarantine, people still got to finish their films, but next year, what's going to happen if people can't go back into production? I've heard of people going back into production now, but there's lots of rules and there's lots of fear and there's lots of ways that it has to be done. And it's going to, time will tell, how is this going to affect this very powerful industry on top of everything. In some ways, we are a feeder for the industry, but Sundance, we never felt part of the industry because it's a commercial, that's a commercial thing out there. And we are more of almost like a gallery that shows the work. And whatever happens after us is great for the filmmakers because they might make their money back and they might be made famous and they might get careers. But for us, it was really most important to keep separate from the industry. So we've never, except for finding ways to help connect filmmakers to the industry, we haven't really been a part of that. We don't take a cut of these films. We don't have anything invested in them financially. So that's kind of what, it's almost like a firewall between the commercial side of the art of cinema and with us. The Institute itself, I'll give you just, started even before the festival, and that's where I first got my job with Sundance. And they created workshops in the summer up in the mountains of Utah where it was selection, where people would come with the script, and it was an amazing script. And then they would get to do a dress rehearsal. They'd be given some actors and a camera and test what their ideas were, almost like a dress rehearsal that you would get in theater, but you never had that in film. You were just in production. And so my first year at the labs in the summer, I remember it was Quentin Tarantino was there. A couple of years after that, Paul Thomas Anderson, Alexander Payne, almost every big director working today somehow was touched somewhere along the line by a Sundance program. And that's what we're very proud of. And that's what we hope to keep doing for many years to come, even in these trying times of COVID and quarantining and safety and all that kind of stuff, because it's a very collaborative art form. It's not like a painter that just goes in a room by themselves and paint. You need a lot of people to make a movie, and that's going to be very interesting how they figure that out over the next year. That was sort of what I had to talk about. I'd really be interested now in hearing some questions. I don't know where we are, Nancy, if we have questions.
Not too many.
Not too many. So
but
that was either really good or people just don't care.
I would say it was really good.
Okay.
But I have a question. Does Sundance Festival has any other programs besides this big day of films?
You mean besides the festival?
Yeah, besides the festival.
We have many of them. They have directing workshops in the summer. We have they have documentary workshops. We do workshops. Oh, and I'll tell you about one other thing in a minute called Collab. We've done films and we've done we call them labs, where it's like a workshop. We've done labs in Mexico City. We've done labs in Hong Kong, in Beirut, in London, so around the world. And it's almost like a technique that they've developed from helping people either with their scripts to get better, or helping with the actual production, shooting a film, and what you learn from that. They're amazing programs, but they are limited to they can't be done in a grand scale in person, because you need that intimacy almost to make it work. Because what happens at a lab is you're shooting scenes from your movie that you're going to shoot. Like when Quentin Tarantino was there, he was shooting scenes that were in the movie, but not with those actors, with different actors. So he was practicing and setting up the shots. And all during that time, there's other famous directors who come in who are older and seasoned to look over his shoulder and say, hey, have you thought of doing it this way? What are you trying to do in this scene? What's your emotion? What are you going for? And then helping them like find the way to tell their story. It's all about telling the story that they want to tell. Okay. Now, in the last couple of years, we've developed something called Collab, which you can find on the Sundance website, which now is growing into a digital teaching. So there's many more like almost master classes and challenges. And almost because we had started that 2 years ago, it made us so much more prepared for this year's festival that's going all digital. We were already thinking about a lot of things in this digital realm and how they can work. So that saved us in some ways. But that is an amazing, like when I was in, it's kind of sad now, but I was in Beirut right before the big disaster there. And there were a lot of people there that came up to me that had learned from Collab workshops. And Collab is CO, and then it's //AB. It's kind of a weird thing. You can find it on the site. But so Collab has really been working effectively, of course, throughout the world. And now we actually have Spanish language translations of a lot of it, because that's another thing you have to, if you're starting to go international, you have to start thinking about what other languages. I think Spanish was the first language that we put together. Spanish in general has always been big, because with Redford, he was very interested in Central America and South America. So we sort of very early, we had lots of partnerships with Mexico and Brazil, actually, and Argentina, for places that we went to first before we branched out into Europe or Asia or any of those other places.
Does these programs are open for everybody, or just to actors, producers?
No, directors? You have to, most of them you have to submit a script. Okay. So you have to have, it's not like you come in like a student at a film school, like teach me. You have to have it's project based. So and now we have an episodic, which mainly for TV shows and things like in web series, but you have to come in. There's different ways they do that. They don't always take the whole script. It's part of scripts, but you have to kind of prove that you are already writing. You have an idea. You have something that you're working on instead of just random people, because the other side of it, it's all free. You don't pay for any of this. So if you get into one of these labs, you get brought in, you get brought to the mountain, you get flown to Utah, you live there for a month, you learn all this stuff, but it's also all paid for by the work that happens at the festival and by donations and by foundations, individual giving, and corporate partnerships through the festival, like sponsorships and stuff like that, which is another big part of what we have to do to throw a festival. Okay.
How many, is there any other, I don't know, other festivals like this one in the world, or this is the festival?
It's for discovery, for pure discovery, and for a festival that comes out of another bigger organization called the Sundance Institute, it's one of the rare ones. Like I see, it's not competition, but I see us on the same level as Cannes and Berlin, but they're showing films by auteurs. They're showing the new film, and they're based on more cinema that, I want to say glamour, but that's too cheap for it, because Cannes is very serious about cinema. But they're really there to show you the best of the top directors working in the world. And that's their niche. Ours has always been discovery, like the ones that no one's heard of yet, which sounds like a great idea, but it also makes it 10 times harder because no one's heard of them. How do you find them? Back to that research part, full circle. How do you find these people? You know, you have to just, they have to hear about you when they're coming up through the ranks. I mean, now most film schools, the students know that I don't know how many times I've heard, it was always a goal of mine to make a film that makes it into Sundance. And that's what we had to create 25 years ago, create a festival that did that to people. Created, I always call us the festival of dreams and possibilities, because that's kind of what it is. You have to believe in it. We sometimes say drink the Kool-Aid. Maybe that's just an American term, I don't know, but
Yeah.
But you have to believe in it, and you have to believe in yourself. The one drawback I see with so many young filmmakers is you're not making a film. You don't make a film for someone else. If it's your film, it's your passion, you have to make it for your vision, and you shouldn't be trying to figure out what's going to buy and what's going to sell, because if it's good, it sells. I've watched it so many years, and if it's good and there's passion in it and you feel the heartbeat of the director, it always sells. And that's what you have to just keep connecting with and stay true to that all the time.
Okay, well, there is a comment, not a question, from Rocio Inés Cartagena Chaco. She says, greetings from Peru. Another one from Oscar Arce, greetings from Mexicali. He said Mexicali.
Yes, I know him.
And yeah, I know.
Just being nice.
Yeah, I know him from a long time ago. I have one last question. If I submitted my movie, you know, and it was rejected, do I have a chance to do it again next year, or it's one chance?
We don't actually limit that. We don't say you only have one chance. There's been many times of where people have submitted a film and then recut it and then submitted it again. Way back, I don't know if you've ever heard of the film Slacker. It was way back in the day. That film was submitted 3 years in a row. The first year, it was 3 hours long. The second year, it was 2.5 hours long. And the third time, it was 2 hours long. And it was finally done. It was finally done the right way because he just couldn't find the story. And we watched it. I remember I watched it 3 years in a row. And finally, it was like, oh, now this film is good. It, like, you have to put that work into it. So a lot of times people will, filmmakers will rush to make a selection, and there's nothing wrong with that, but we will look at films again. But I think the thing that for most people they should remember is once you've made your film, you only have one world premiere. It's like, because of that, you have to decide where your world premiere is going to be, because for our competition, it has to be a world premiere. So you have to judge. You have a very hard job. You have a finished film that you believe is good. Now, where do you go? You know, and it's like a lot of people try Sundance first, but I don't want to make like Sundance is the only way through too. A lot of films go to other festivals, South by Southwest, even Tribeca, films of made it through there and it made it into the marketplace. And then there's international festivals too. The most international film festival like us, I think, is one called Carlo Vivari in the Czech Republic. And they tend to find younger filmmakers and filmmakers that are coming up, first-time filmmakers, like we do. And we also are friends with all these other festivals. So I remember many times I would be heartbroken that a film that I liked just didn't make it in, but then you call that film and that film festival and you say, do you give them a tip? Like, check this one out, it's pretty good. And a lot of times that also gets in. And I think the thing that young filmmakers have to remember is you never know who is watching you, who's watching your career, who's paying attention to you, even though they've never even had contact with them. We track people and their projects a lot more than most people realize. We know about you, even though you don't think we do. And that has helped a lot, over the years.
How do you do that?
How do we track them? Well, you read the trade papers will say stuff, but also you'll see if somebody's film didn't get into Sundance, you will go to another festival and meet them there or see them there or see how it plays. We always read the reviews of films. Okay, here's a weird thing. I never mind if a film that we've rejected plays another festival. I want them to play other festivals. I want young filmmakers to be successful. What makes me crazy and did back in the years, if I'd never heard of that film, if it plays a film festival after us and we didn't see it or take it seriously or even have heard of it, that's when I went crazy. That's what I was like, how come we never heard of that film? What happened? Why didn't we know about it? Now, if we saw it and we rejected it for our own reasons, because it's such a subjective thing, then I don't mind it so much. Because it's like, I'm happy to make a mistake, but what I don't want to do is not know about it. That's the mistake. So when back to research, that's what you do. You like look at every time a new listing comes out for like South by Southwest, someone go through and say, this one was submitted to us, this one was submitted to us, this one wasn't. And it's like, well, why? Well, sometimes it's just because they couldn't finish in time for us. And that happens too. But sometimes it's like, you don't ever want filmmakers to think that it's not possible with Sundance. You never want to get into that place where they think we're too snobby or too big. That's why I do things like this all year long. I'm always talking about what we do. Hopefully filmmakers are watching, and that's why we go to colleges and that's why we go to other festivals and talk about what we do. So people feel comfortable with us because we're not fancy and we're not elite at all. They're kind of hardworking people that work on these festivals that believe in them passionately. So that has to translate over a lot and go out into the world. And the biggest thing that happens for us is when filmmakers come to the festival and go back to their country and are in the press or talking just their friends, and it's, it goes through the community. Like we showed a film from like Malaysia, and we hadn't shown a film, I don't think hardly ever. And once that film went back and that filmmaker went back, the next year, all these films from Malaysia came to us. Like it creates like a thing, like we don't have to worry about Mexico. We've shown a lot of films from Mexico, but maybe we do. But there are lots of places where it's hard for them to think about this weird place in a ski resort in the middle of a crazy America that has all this opportunity for them. So we're always trying to create those opportunities so they take those stories back to their own communities.
Okay, we have one last comment question. It's from Angie Eliana Vegas Rojas. He said, all your experiences are very interesting. The world of films is the biggest, one of the most representative and recognized. Thank you so much for your topic and greetings from Peru. It was a comment, not a question.
More from Peru.
More from Peru. Yeah, we have a lot of people from Peru.
Really?
Yeah.
Because we haven't shown that many films from Peru, but it's funny when a country all of a sudden almost like, I remember we didn't have hardly any films from Chile, and then all of a sudden the industry takes off, and Colombia has been really active as well with the Cartagena Film Festival. You know, Cuba has a long history of filmmaking, Brazil, Argentina, those are the big ones. But Peru, we haven't seen that much. But
maybe you will soon.
Maybe so. Maybe after this. All you Peruvians.
Yeah, maybe. Well, there are a lot of greetings from Eduardo de la Rosa. Excellent presentation. Cecilia Flores. Thank you for sharing your experiences.
Yeah.
Great dissertation. Well, we're so happy to have you with us today on our last day of the week, of the first week international of research. And we're really proud to have you with us. And I'm going to share my screen with and I'm going to read it. It says, Universidad Xochicalco otorga el presente reconocimiento a John Cooper por su conferencia Researching Artists, a Moving Target, en Ensenada, Baja California, 13 de noviembre de 2020. It is signed by myself.
Sweet.
And I will send it by email. Hopefully I will be able to give it to you in person soon.
Yes. And for all you from other countries, pray for America.
Yeah.
We're in a crazy place from now. So
I know.
But it's very interesting time here in this country. But as we like to say, it's a freak show right now.
Yeah.
But pray for us. We're gonna get through this.
You are. We always do. So
I know. It's true.
Y bueno, además quiero aprovechar para, con esta conferencia estamos dando por concluida la primera semana internacional de investigación. Voy a compartir mi pantalla para, por un lado, reconocer y agradecer el trabajo de todos nuestros ponentes. Fueron 13 conferencias a lo largo de la semana. Tuvimos de diferentes temas: salud, derecho, educación, cine, liderazgo, biodiversidad, arquitectura, ingeniería. Bueno, de todas las... Hubiéramos querido tener más conferencias de otras áreas, pero bueno, el tiempo tampoco nos permitía hacerlo. Agradezco a todos los conferencistas que nos apoyaron en esta primera semana y a nuestros asistentes de diferentes países y de México. Les agradecemos su interés por esta primera semana y los invitamos a la segunda, que bueno, aún no tenemos fecha, pero seguramente será dentro de un año. Muchísimas gracias por su tiempo y su dedicación para estar con nosotros. Thank you, John Cooper, again.
Thank you.
Hope to see you soon.
Yes, in Ensenada.
Yeah, you have to come.
All right, I will.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Just let me know when you're coming.
All right. Thank you very much for inviting me.
No, you're welcome.
It was sweet. Next time in person.
All yeah, right. I hopefully will do.
All right. All
okay.
Right. Goodbye. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.